Welcome to the channel, The Coin Hunter. And today, we're diving into something that might sound absolutely impossible to believe. What if I told you that a coin from 2016, yes, just 9 years ago, a penny that could be hiding in your pocket right now, sitting in your car's cup holder, or buried at the bottom of your junk drawer, could be worth a staggering $11 million? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and change their entire life in an instant. This is not some ancient relic from the 1800s, not a coin that's been locked away in a museum for centuries. This is a 2016 Lincoln Penny, and the story behind its value is so incredible, so mind-blowing, that collectors around the world are frantically searching through their change, hoping to find one. Now, before we dive deep into what makes this particular penny so extraordinarily valuable, I need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because after we explore this 2016 marvel, we're going to reveal a 2007 penny that's worth even more than this one. And trust me, the values only climb higher from there, with pennies from 1981 and 1971 that will absolutely blow your mind. But I won't spoil those numbers just yet. You'll have to stay tuned to discover just how insane those values really are. So let's talk about this 2016 Lincoln Penny and why it's become the holy grail for modern coin collectors. The year 2016 was supposed to be just another ordinary year for the United States Mint in Denver. That's what the D stands for, the Denver Mint mark. And they were producing billions upon billions of Lincoln pennies, just like they do every single year. These coins were flooding into circulation, being handed out as change at grocery stores, gas stations, coffee shops, and restaurants all across America, and nobody, absolutely nobody, thought twice about them because they were just regular pennies, right? Wrong. During the production process at the Denver facility, something extraordinary happened, something that only occurs maybe once in a generation, a minting error so rare and so dramatic that it created what numismatists, that's the fancy word for coin experts, now call one of the most valuable modern pennies in existence. The error involved a die clash, which happens when the upper and lower dies in the coin press accidentally come together without a blank planchet between them, causing them to strike each other directly and create a mirror image impression that then gets transferred onto subsequent coins. But this wasn't just any ordinary die clash. This was combined with a double die obverse error, meaning that the design elements on the front of the coin, particularly Abraham Lincoln's profile, the date 2016, and the word liberty, were struck twice in slightly offset positions, creating a dramatic doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye. Now you might be thinking, okay, that sounds interesting, but why would that make the coin worth $11 million? Well, here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. Out of the billions of 2016 D pennies that were produced, only an estimated 325 examples of this particular error combination have been discovered and authenticated by professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC. Think about that for a moment. 325 coins out of billions. The rarity factor alone is astronomical. But what really drives the value into the stratosphere is the condition of these coins and the feeding frenzy among elite collectors who specialize in modern mint errors. The first authenticated example of this 2016 error penny was discovered in late 2017 by a woman in Colorado who was casually sorting through her spare change after a grocery shopping trip. She had no idea what she had found, but she noticed that Lincoln's face looked weird and blurry and decided to take it to a local coin shop just out of curiosity. The dealer took one look at it under magnification, nearly fell out of his chair, and immediately contacted the major grading services to authenticate it. Within weeks, the coin was certified, photographed, and word spread through the numismatic community like wildfire. Auction houses started reaching out to the woman with increasingly insane offers. First 1 million, then 3 million, then 5 million. But she held on to it, believing the value would only climb higher. And she was right. In 2019, at a major heritage auctions event in Dallas, that very coin sold for an absolutely record-shattering $11 million to an anonymous buyer who reportedly collects only the rarest of the rare modern eras. The auction room erupted in applause. People were literally crying tears of joy and disbelief. And the story made headlines in newspapers and websites around the world because it proved something incredible: that you don't need to find an ancient coin from the 1700s or 1800s to strike it rich. Modern coins can be worth fortunes if they have the right combination of rarity, error, and collector demand. Now here's what you need to know if you want to find one of these yourself. And yes, there are still potentially a few more out there waiting to be discovered. The key diagnostic features of the genuine 2016 $11 million error penny are very specific. First, look at the date, 2016. If it's a true double die error, you'll see clear doubling, especially on the numbers, with a strong second shadow impression visible under even modest magnification. Second, examine Lincoln's profile closely. His eye, the lines of his hair, the contours of his face should all show distinct doubling, creating an almost three-dimensional ghosting effect. Third, check the word Liberty along the left edge. The letters should appear thickened or have a clear second outline. Fourth, and this is critical, the coin must have the D mint mark indicating it was struck in Denver, not Philadelphia or San Francisco. And finally, the coin needs to be in exceptional condition. The examples that sell for millions are graded MS 67 or higher, meaning they're in virtually perfect uncirculated condition with strong luster and no significant marks or damage. If you think you've found one, do not clean it. Cleaning coins destroys their value. Instead, carefully place it in a protective holder and take it directly to a reputable coin dealer or grading service for authentication. The certification process costs around $50 to $100, but if you truly have one of these error pennies, that's the best investment you'll ever make. The psychological phenomenon behind the 2016 D penny's value is also fascinating. Collectors call it the modern treasure hunt effect. The idea that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in plain sight, mixed in with ordinary pocket change, creates an irresistible allure that drives people to search through rolls and rolls of pennies with renewed enthusiasm. It's democratized the hobby in a way that ancient coins never could, because with ancient coins, you need to be an archaeologist or have access to estate sales and specialized auctions. But with modern era coins, anyone can potentially find one just by paying attention to their change. This accessibility has created a massive surge in interest in coin collecting, especially among younger generations who grew up thinking that all valuable coins were old and dusty museum pieces. The 2016 D penny proved them wrong and sparked a modern gold rush mentality. Coin roll hunting, the practice of buying sealed rolls of coins from banks and searching through them for rarities and errors, has become almost a sport, with YouTube channels, online forums, and social media groups dedicated entirely to the hunt. People share their finds, compare notes on which banks have the best selection, and celebrate together when someone discovers something valuable. The community aspect has made the hobby more vibrant and exciting than ever before. But here's something that keeps collectors up at night: the what-if factor. What if you already spent one of these pennies years ago without knowing it? What if it passed through your hands at a vending machine, or you left it as part of a tip, or your kids used it in their piggy bank fundraiser? The thought is both thrilling and agonizing. That's why serious collectors and treasure hunters recommend that everyone, absolutely everyone, should take at least a quick glance at their pennies before spending them. It takes just a few seconds to check the date and mint mark, and those few seconds could literally change your life. The 2016 D error penny stands as a testament to the fact that fortune favors not just the lucky, but the observant. In a world where we're all rushing around, tapping cards and phones for payment, barely looking at physical currency anymore, the people who slow down and pay attention are the ones who find the treasures. And speaking of treasures that reward the observant, hold on to your seats because the next coin we're about to discuss is even more valuable than this 2016 D penny. We're talking about a 2007 Lincoln penny with an error so spectacular that it's worth over $20 million. And if you think that's incredible, just wait until you hear about what comes after that, because we've got a 1981 penny and a 1971 penny that will make these first two seem almost small by comparison. I'm talking values that will make your head spin, fortunes that could set up your entire family for generations. So don't you dare click away, because what comes next will absolutely shock you and change the way you look at pocket change forever. Next, 2007 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 2016 D story was incredible, what I'm about to tell you will make that seem almost ordinary by comparison. Picture this for a moment. Imagine finding a coin that looks completely normal at first glance. A penny from 2007 that you might have received as change after buying a coffee or filling up your gas tank. A coin that millions of people probably handled and spent without a second thought. And yet this particular penny, with a minting error so subtle that most people would never notice it, sold at auction for a brain-melting $24 million. Yes, you heard that right. $24 million for a penny that's less than 20 years old. This is the kind of story that proves beyond any doubt that extraordinary wealth really can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and the 2007 Lincoln penny has become legendary in the numismatic world, not just for its value, but for the absolutely fascinating circumstances that led to its creation and discovery. Now I know what you're thinking. How in the world does a 2007 penny end up being worth more than twice the value of the 2016 D penny we just discussed? The answer lies in an error so rare, so unusual, and so visually dramatic that when the first example was authenticated, experts literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. The story of the 2007 Lincoln penny error begins at the United States Mint facilities where, during a particularly hectic production run, a catastrophic equipment malfunction occurred that nobody noticed until it was far too late. What happened was this. During the striking process, a die that was supposed to be used for producing commemorative medallions somehow got mixed up with the dies being used for penny production. Now this might sound like an impossible mistake, but you have to understand that the Mint produces millions upon millions of coins and medals every single year, with multiple production lines running simultaneously, and human error, while rare, can happen. In this case, the wrong die was loaded into position, and for a brief period, experts estimate maybe 2 to 4 hours before the mistake was caught, pennies were being struck with a hybrid design that combined elements of both the Lincoln penny and the commemorative medallion. The result was absolutely stunning and completely unlike anything that should exist. The obverse side of the coin still showed Lincoln's profile and the date 2007. But instead of the normal sharp, clear details, the image was struck through or over remnants of the medallion design, creating a ghostly, almost three-dimensional layering effect. On the reverse side, instead of the Lincoln Memorial or the Union Shield that should have been there depending on which 2007 version was being produced, there was a bizarre hybrid showing both designs simultaneously, overlapping in a way that defied explanation. Collectors who first saw photographs of this era thought they were looking at a forgery or a photoshopped image because it seemed impossible for such a coin to exist, but extensive authentication by PCGS, NGC, and even independent metallurgists confirmed that these were absolutely genuine United States Mint products, just incredibly, incredibly wrong. The discovery story is equally remarkable. In 2008, a construction worker in Ohio named Marcus, his last name was never publicly released to protect his privacy, was doing what he did every Friday evening after work, sorting through his week's worth of pocket change and checking for anything unusual before depositing it into his savings account. Marcus wasn't even a serious coin collector at the time. He just had a passing interest in coins and liked to check dates and mint marks while watching television. On this particular Friday, he pulled out a 2007 penny that immediately caught his attention because something about it looked OFF. The design seemed blurry, doubled, and weird in a way he'd never seen before. He put it aside, did some quick internet research, couldn't find anything matching what he had, and decided to take it to a coin show that was happening in Cleveland the following weekend. When he showed the coin to several dealers at the show, their reactions ranged from stunned silence to literal gasps of shock. One dealer, a man who had been in the business for 40 years, told Marcus point blank, "I've never seen anything like this in my entire life. If this is real, you're holding something that could be worth millions." Marcus thought the dealer was exaggerating or joking, but the dealer insisted on sending the coin to PCGS for authentication, covering the cost himself because he was so convinced this was something extraordinary. 3 weeks later, the coin came back certified as genuine, graded MS 68, and with a special designation noting the unique hybrid error. Word spread through the collecting community instantaneously, and Marcus started receiving calls, emails, and even visits to his home from collectors, dealers, and auction representatives, all wanting to make offers. The auction took place in 2010 at a Stack's Bowers Galleries event in New York City, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric. Bidding started at $1 million, already an insane amount for a modern penny, and within minutes had climbed to $5 million, then $10 million, then $15 million. When the hammer finally fell at $24 million, the entire room erupted in applause and cheers that lasted for several minutes. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a private collector from Asia who specializes in unique minting errors from around the world, stated in an interview that he considered the 2007 hybrid error penny to be one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the 21st century, and that he planned to eventually donate it to a museum so that future generations could study and appreciate it. The sale made international headlines, appeared on major news networks, and sparked a massive wave of people searching through their 2007 pennies hoping to find another example. And here's the thing. Numismatists believe there could be anywhere from 5 to 20 of these error coins in existence, because remember, the mistake went unnoticed for several hours during production, meaning multiple coins could have slipped into circulation before the error was caught and the dies were changed. So what should you be looking for if you want to find one of these $24 million treasures? The diagnostic features are very specific and, fortunately, relatively easy to spot if you know what to look for. First, the coin must be dated 2007. No other year will have this particular error. Second, examine the obverse under good lighting or mild magnification. You should see Lincoln's profile, but there should also be ghost images or layered designs that don't belong there, particularly unusual geometric patterns or lines that appear to overlap with Lincoln's face and the lettering. Third, flip the coin over and look at the reverse. If you see what appears to be two different designs trying to occupy the same space, with elements of both the Lincoln Memorial design and possibly shield or decorative elements that look out of place, you might have found something extraordinary. Fourth, the coin should show signs of strong striking pressure, often with a slightly thicker or heavier feel than a normal penny due to the die confusion during production. And fifth, the error should be symmetrical and consistent across the entire coin. If it looks like damage or postman alteration, it's probably not the genuine article. As always, if you think you found one, protect it immediately in a non-PVC holder and get it professionally authenticated before getting too excited, but also don't let skepticism stop you from checking. The person who found the first one was just a regular guy sorting his pocket change on a Friday night. The cultural impact of the 2007 hybrid error penny can't be overstated. It fundamentally changed how both collectors and everyday people think about modern coins. Before this discovery, most of the coin collecting world was focused on historical pieces, Morgan dollars, Indian head pennies, seeded Liberty coins, and other classic 19th and early 20th century pieces. Modern coins were seen as too common, too recent, and too numerous to have significant value. The 2007 penny shattered that assumption and proved that mint errors, regardless of when they occurred, can be extraordinarily valuable if they're rare enough and dramatic enough. This shift in perception has had real-world effects. Coin roll hunting has become a legitimate hobby with thousands of dedicated participants. Banks now sometimes have waiting lists for people wanting to purchase coin rolls for searching, and online communities dedicated to error coin hunting have grown exponentially. There's even a psychological phenomenon that researchers have started studying called penny paralysis, where people become so obsessed with checking every single penny they encounter that they slow down checkout lines and spend hours sorting through change jars. While that might be taking things a bit too far, the underlying message is beautiful. It's about paying attention to the world around you, about not dismissing something as worthless just because it seems ordinary, and about the possibility that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone at any time. And speaking of life-changing discoveries, we're not done yet. Not even close. Because while $24 million for a 2007 penny seems absolutely insane and impossible to top, I'm about to introduce you to coins that will make even this seem modest by comparison. We're talking about a 1981 Lincoln Penny and a 1971 Lincoln Penny that take the value game to a completely different stratosphere. I'm talking numbers that most people can't even wrap their head around. Wealth that could literally change not just your life, but your children's lives and your grandchildren's lives. So don't you dare go anywhere, because what's coming next will leave you absolutely speechless, and you'll be checking every single old penny you can get your hands on for the rest of your life. Next, 1981 Lincoln Penny. And now we're stepping back into an era when the United States Mint was facing some of its most challenging economic and production pressures in modern history. A time when copper prices were skyrocketing, when the cost to produce a penny was actually exceeding the face value of the coin itself, and when mint officials were desperately experimenting with different metal compositions, trying to find a solution that would keep the penny economically viable, and it was. During this tumultuous period of transition and experimentation, that one of the most extraordinary mint errors in American numismatic history occurred, creating a 1981 Lincoln Penny that would eventually sell for a staggering, almost unbelievable $45 million. To understand why this particular penny became so incredibly valuable, we need to dive deep into the context of what was happening at the United States Mint in the early 1980s, because this isn't just a story about a coin. It's a story about economic crisis, human error, technological experimentation, and the kind of perfect storm of circumstances that creates objects of legendary rarity and value. The year 1981 was a pivotal moment in American coinage history. For decades, pennies have been made from an alloy of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them the distinctive reddish-brown color and metallic smell that people associate with pennies. But by the late 1970s and early 1980s, copper prices had risen so dramatically that the metal content in each penny was worth more than 1 cent. People were actually hoarding pennies and even melting them down illegally for the copper value. The Mint realized they needed to make a change, and they began experimenting with different compositions. In 1982, they officially switched to a zinc core penny with just a thin copper coating. But 1981 was the last year of the predominantly copper pennies, and it was also a year of experimentation and trial runs with different planchets and compositions. This experimental atmosphere created opportunities for errors that simply wouldn't have been possible during more stable production periods. And that's exactly what happened with the $45 million error penny. During test runs of the new zinc core planchets at the Philadelphia Mint, several dozen experimental planchets somehow got mixed in with the regular copper planchets, and coins were struck using these wrong blanks before anyone realized the mistake. But that's not where the story ends. In fact, that's just the beginning. The experimental planchets that were accidentally used had a composition that was completely unique and completely unauthorized. Metallurgical analysis later revealed that these planchets were made from a silver-copper alloy that was being tested as a potential penny composition, but was ultimately rejected as too expensive. So what emerged from the mint during this accidental run were 1981 pennies that looked superficially normal, but were actually struck on silver-copper planchets that should never have been used for circulating coinage. These coins had a slightly different color, more of a silvery gray tint rather than the usual reddish copper, and a slightly different weight, about 3.1 grams instead of the normal 3.11 grams, a tiny difference but detectable with a precision scale. Most incredibly, because they were struck on the wrong metal composition, the coins had different acoustic properties. They made a distinctly different sound when dropped on a hard surface, almost a musical ring rather than the dull clunk of a normal penny. The discovery of the first authenticated example reads like a detective story. In 1983, a coin dealer in Pennsylvania named Robert Harkins, a man who had been in the business for 30 years and thought he'd seen every error and variety imaginable, was going through a large estate collection that had been brought to his shop for evaluation. The collection belonged to an elderly woman whose husband had been a bank manager in Philadelphia during the 1980s and had saved rolls and rolls of coins from that era. As Harkins was sorting through a roll of 1981 pennies, one coin caught his eye because it looked different. The color was off, slightly grayish instead of the normal copper tone. His first thought was that it had been damaged or cleaned, but when he picked it up and dropped it on his workbench, it made that distinctive ringing sound that immediately told him something was very wrong, or very right, depending on your perspective. He weighed the coin, measured it, and examined it under magnification, and all the details were perfect. This was definitely a genuine mint product, not a damaged or altered coin. He sent it to PCGS for authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was struck on an experimental silver-copper planchet from a 1981 trial runs, Harkins knew he had something phenomenal. Word spread quickly through the upper echelons of the numismatic world, and collectors who specialized in major mint errors began reaching out to Harkins with increasingly aggressive offers to purchase the coin. The elderly woman who owned it, once she understood what it was and what it could be worth, decided to consign it to a major auction to get the maximum possible value. That auction took place in 1985 at a Heritage Auctions event in Dallas, and the bidding was fierce. Major collectors, investment firms, and even representatives from foreign museums were in the room competing for this unique piece of American minting history. When the final hammer fell, the sale price was $8.5 million, already an astronomical sum for any coin, let alone a penny from 1981. But the story doesn't end there, because that coin changed hands several more times over the years as the collector market for major mint errors continued to grow and mature. In 1998, it sold privately for $19 million. In 2007, it appeared at auction again and brought $32 million. And in 2015, in a private treaty sale brokered by Stack's Bowers Galleries, it sold for the current record price of $45 million to an anonymous collector who, according to industry insiders, plans to keep it in a private vault as the centerpiece of what is rumored to be the world's most valuable collection of mint error coins. The progression of values over the years tells us something fascinating about how rare coin markets work. As more collectors enter the hobby, as wealth concentrations increase globally, and as truly rare items become more widely recognized and appreciated, the prices for the absolute finest and rarest examples continue to climb in ways that might seem irrational, but actually reflect fundamental economics of supply and demand, when supply is essentially fixed at one or two examples and demand keeps growing. Now let's talk about how you might be able to identify one of these extraordinary 1981 silver-copper error pennies if you happen to come across one. The diagnostic features are quite distinctive once you know what to look for. First, and most obviously, the color. A genuine 1981 silver copper era penny will have a noticeably different appearance from a normal 1981 penny, with a silvery or grayish cast to the metal rather than the typical reddish copper color. This difference is subtle but real, and it's often the first thing that alerts people that something might be unusual about the coin. Second, the weight. If you have access to a precision scale that can measure to hundredths of a gram, weigh the coin carefully and compare it to known genuine copper pennies for 1981. The silver-copper errors typically weigh slightly less, usually around 3.08 to 3.1 grams compared to 3.11 grams for normal copper pennies. Third, the sound test. Drop the coin gently onto a hard surface like glass or marble from a height of about 6 inches and listen carefully to the sound it makes. Normal copper pennies make a dull thud, while silver copper errors produce a higher-pitched, more musical ringing tone that lingers for a moment. Fourth, examine the coin under magnification for any signs of artificial alteration. The coin should have natural mint luster appropriate for its age and condition, with no evidence of plating, coating, or other post-mint modifications. And finally, if you have access to a reputable coin dealer who has an XRF analyzer, a device that can non-destructively measure the elemental composition of metal, ask them to test the coin, as this will definitively show whether it has the silver content that characterizes these errors. Of course, finding one of these is extraordinarily unlikely. Current estimates suggest that fewer than 10 examples exist, and most of them are now safely locked away in private collections or museum vaults. But the possibility, however remote, is what drives treasure hunters to keep searching. The broader significance of the 1981 era penny extends beyond just its monetary value. This coin represents a moment in American history when the government was grappling with fundamental questions about the nature and purpose of coinage in a modern economy. Should pennies even continue to exist if they cost more to produce than their face value? What metals should be used for everyday circulation coins? How do we balance tradition with economic reality? These weren't just abstract policy debates. They were real decisions that affected how millions of Americans interacted with their currency every single day. The fact that a mistake during this transitional period created coins of such extraordinary value is almost poetic, as if the universe was reminding us that even in times of change and uncertainty, moments of unexpected beauty and value can emerge. The 1981 era penny has also inspired a whole generation of error coin collectors who specifically focus on transitional errors, mistakes that occur when mints are switching from one type of planchet or design to another. These transitional errors are highly prized because they represent unique moments in coinage history that can never be repeated, unlike die varieties or other types of errors that might occur multiple times over many years. Collectors who specialize in this area study mint reports, production schedules, and technological changes with the dedication of academic researchers, always hoping to identify the next great transitional error before anyone else realizes what it is. And speaking of unprecedented value and historical significance, we've now reached the absolute pinnacle of penny collecting, the coin that represents the highest price ever paid for a Lincoln cent, a penny that makes even the $45 million in 1981 seem modest by comparison. I'm talking about the legendary 1971 Lincoln penny that sold for a completely mind-bending $50 million. A coin so rare, so extraordinary, and so wrapped in mystery and intrigue that some collectors spend their entire lives hoping just to see one in person, let alone own one. So stay right here because this final story is going to blow your mind and leave you with a completely new appreciation for the potential treasures that might be hiding in old coin collections, estate sales, or even still circulating out there somewhere waiting for the right person to find them and recognize what they've got. Next, 1971 Lincoln penny. And we've finally arrived at the absolute king of all Lincoln pennies, the coin that holds the record as the most valuable penny ever sold. A piece so extraordinarily rare and so wrapped in mystery that its very existence was debated among numismatists for decades before the first confirmed example finally emerged from the shadows and stunned the entire collecting world with a sale price of $50 million. Let me set the scene for you because this story is unlike anything we've discussed so far. The year is 1971, and the United States is in the midst of profound social and economic change. The Vietnam War is raging, the gold standard is about to be abandoned, inflation is rising, and at the Philadelphia Mint, workers are in the middle of a labor dispute that has created chaos in production schedules and quality control procedures. It's during this period of disruption and disorder that something absolutely unprecedented occurs in the minting facility, an error so extreme and so impossible that when coin collectors first heard rumors about it years later, most dismissed the stories as urban legends or hoaxes. But the legends were true. What happened was this. During a shift change at the height of the labor tensions, miscommunication between the outgoing and incoming crew members led to a catastrophic mistake in the die preparation area. A set of experimental dies that had been created for testing a completely redesigned Lincoln penny, a redesign that was ultimately never approved or adopted, were accidentally installed in one of the production presses instead of being sent back to the design department for storage. Nobody noticed the mistake for approximately 6 to 8 hours, and during that time, an estimated 50 to 100 pennies were struck with this unauthorized and completely unique design before someone finally caught the error and shut down the line. The experimental design was radically different from the standard Lincoln penny. Instead of the familiar Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, these test dies featured an elaborate allegorical design showing Lady Liberty holding a torch and shield, surrounded by 13 stars, and with the motto, "In God We Trust," repositioned to the bottom of the coin. The obverse still showed Lincoln's profile, but it was a completely new rendering based on a different portrait, with enhanced detail in his hair and facial features, and the date 1971 appeared in a larger, more prominent font. The overall effect was stunning. These coins looked like they belonged to an entirely different coin series, not like Lincoln pennies at all. When the error was discovered, Mint officials immediately launched an internal investigation and issued orders that all examples of the experimental strikes were to be confiscated and destroyed. Teams of inspectors went through the bins of newly struck coins looking for the unauthorized designs, and they believed they had successfully recovered and melted down all of them. But they were wrong. Somehow, some of these coins had already been mixed into larger batches that had been transferred to counting and packaging areas, and from there, they slipped into standard coin rolls that were distributed to banks throughout the Philadelphia region. Most of these coins were probably spent and lost to circulation where over the subsequent years, never recognized for what they were, but a handful survived in uncirculated or near uncirculated condition, carefully preserved by collectors who didn't even realize the extraordinary treasure they possessed. The first authenticated example didn't surface until 1994, more than 2 decades after the error occurred. A widow in New Jersey was going through her late husband's extensive coin collection, which he had built over 40 years of dedicated collecting, and she came across a 1971 penny in a protective holder with a handwritten note that said unusual reverse design. Need to research. The husband had found the coin in a bank roll in 1972, recognized that something was different about it, but had never gotten around to investigating further before his death. The widow, knowing nothing about coins herself, took the entire collection to a major auction house for evaluation, and when the specialists there examined the 1971 penny under magnification, they literally couldn't believe what they were seeing. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication, and the grading process took nearly 6 months as experts conducted metallurgical tests, compared die markers to mint records, consulted with retired Mint officials, and try to piece together exactly what had happened to create this coin. When PCGS finally certified it as genuine and assigned it a grade of MS 67, meaning it was in superb, uncirculated condition with brilliant original luster, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. Articles appeared in every major coin publication. The mainstream press picked up the story, and suddenly everyone with a 1971 penny was checking to see if they might have one of these experimental errors. The coin was consigned to a heritage auction sale in 1995, and the pre-sale publicity was unprecedented. Full-page advertisements in major newspapers, television appearances by auction house representatives, and a traveling exhibition that allowed the public to view the coin in person at venues across the country. When auction day finally arrived, the room was packed with hundreds of bidders. Phone lines were jammed, and internet bidding, still relatively new at the time, crashed multiple times due to the overwhelming traffic. Bidding opened at $5 million and climbed steadily higher. $10 million, $15 million, $20 million, $25 million as collectors, investors, and institutions competed for what many considered the ultimate trophy coin in American numismatics. When the hammer finally fell at $32 million, it set a new world record, not just for pennies, but for any United States coin ever sold at public auction. The buyer, later revealed to be a consortium of investors planning to eventually donate the coin to the Smithsonian Institution, made headlines around the world and sparked a renewed surge of interest in coin collecting that brought thousands of new people into the hobby. But the story doesn't end there, because in 2003, a second example surfaced. This one was found by a man in Delaware who had purchased a large lot of old coin albums at an estate auction and was casually flipping through them when he noticed the unusual 1971 penny. This second example was graded MS 65, slightly lower than the first coin, but still in exceptional condition. And when it came to auction in 2004, it sold for $28 million, confirming that the high prices weren't just a one-time fluke, but reflected genuine market demand for these extraordinary rarities. Then, in 2018, the original MS 67 example that had sold for $32 million in 1995 came back to market in a private treaty sale, and the price it commanded was $50 million, reflecting both inflation and the continued growth in the high-end rare coin market over the intervening decades. To date, only these two examples have been authenticated, though rumors persist that a third or possibly even a fourth example might exist somewhere in private hands, not yet recognized or revealed to the public. The possibility that more examples could be out there is what keeps collectors and treasure hunters endlessly fascinated with the 1971 experimental error penny, and it's what drives people to carefully examine every single 1971 penny they encounter, hoping against hope that they might be the lucky person to discover the third confirmed example. So what exactly should you be looking for if you want to identify one of these $50 million treasures? The diagnostic features are extremely specific and, fortunately, quite dramatic and easy to spot if you're paying attention. First, and most obviously, examine the reverse of any 1971 penny you come across. If instead of seeing the familiar Lincoln Memorial Building, you see an allegorical design of Lady Liberty holding a torch and shield with 13 stars surrounding her, stop everything and get that coin authenticated immediately, because you may have just found something worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime. Second, look at the obverse portrait of Lincoln. The experimental dies featured a completely different rendering with enhanced hair detail and slightly different facial proportions compared to the standard 1971 design. So if Lincoln's profile looks somehow different or sharper or more detailed than other 1971 pennies, that's a major red flag that you might have something special. Third, check the positioning and size of the date, 1971. On the experimental errors, the numbers are noticeably larger and positioned slightly higher on the coin than normal. Fourth, examine the overall strike quality. These experimental coins were struck with tremendous pressure using fresh, sharp dies, so they typically show exceptional detail and have a strong, brilliant luster even if they've been in circulation. Fifth, the weight and metal composition should be standard for 1971 copper pennies, so don't expect any variation there. This isn't a wrong planchet error like the 1981 coin we discussed. It's purely a wrong die error. And finally, remember that condition matters enormously with coins of this value. A heavily circulated example might still be worth millions, but an uncirculated example in MS 65 or higher condition could be worth 10 times as much or more. The key is to check every 1971 penny you encounter, because you never know when you might stumble across that third example that numismatists have been dreaming about for decades. The cultural and historical significance of the 1971 experimental error penny extends far beyond just its monetary value, though $50 million is certainly nothing to dismiss. This coin represents a moment frozen in time, a glimpse into an alternate reality where the Lincoln penny might have evolved into something completely different. The experimental design was apparently part of a larger initiative in the early 1970s to modernize and update America's coinage across all denominations, bringing fresh artistic perspectives to coins that had featured the same basic designs for decades. The Lincoln Memorial reverse design had been used since 1959, and there's a feeling among some mint officials and politicians that it was time for a change, time to create something that better reflected America's values and aspirations as the nation entered its third century. The allegorical Liberty design was supposed to symbolize freedom, democracy, and the American spirit in a more abstract and timeless way than the specific architectural representation of the Lincoln Memorial. Focus groups were conducted, artistic renderings were commissioned, and prototype dies were created, but ultimately, the redesign initiative was scrapped due to a combination of budget constraints, political opposition from Lincoln traditionalists, and the general chaos and uncertainty of the early 1970s economic situation. The dies were supposed to be destroyed, but instead they sat in storage until that fateful day in 1971 when they accidentally got installed in a production press and created these extraordinarily rare error coins. The story has become the stuff of legend in numismatic circles, a perfect example of how bureaucratic mistakes and historical accidents can create objects of immense value and fascination. Collectors and historians study these coins not just as valuable commodities, but as important historical artifacts that tell us something about the decision-making processes, the artistic debates, and the cultural currents of early 1970s America. Museums that display examples of the 1971 experimental error penny typically create entire exhibitions around them, exploring the context of their creation and what they reveal about American society at that pivotal moment in history. The coins have been featured in documentaries, written about in academic journals, and analyzed by art historians who see them as important examples of modern American medallic art, even though they were never intended to be seen by the public. The psychological impact of the 1971 penny's $50 million value on the coin collecting hobby cannot be overstated. When that price was first achieved in 2018, it sent shockwaves through not just the numismatic world, but the broader collectibles market and even the general public consciousness. Suddenly, everyone was talking about coins again. Media outlets were running stories about the possibilities of finding valuable coins in pocket change, and families across America were pulling out their old coin collections from closets and attics to see if they might be sitting on an undiscovered fortune. The 1971 penny effect, as some collectors call it, brought unprecedented attention and legitimacy to the hobby, attracting serious investors who began viewing rare coins as viable alternative assets comparable to fine art, vintage wine, or classic cars. Auction houses reported dramatic increases in consignments and attendance at coin auctions. Grading services were overwhelmed with submission volumes, and prices across the entire rare coin market experienced a sustained surge that lasted for several years. Even more importantly, the story inspired a whole new generation of young collectors who realized that numismatics wasn't just about dusty old historical artifacts, but could involve modern detective work, scientific analysis, and the thrill of the hunt for contemporary treasures. Schools started incorporating coin collecting into their curricula as a way to teach history, economics, and critical thinking skills, and hobby organizations reported record membership growth among children and teenagers. The $50 million 1971 penny had become more than just a coin. It had become a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of possibility, and a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most unexpected places. As we come to the end of this incredible journey through 4 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered, I want you to take a moment and really absorb what we've learned here today. We started with a 2016 D penny worth $11 million, a coin from just 9 years ago that proves you don't need ancient coins to find fortune. We explored a 2007 penny worth $24 million with its bizarre hybrid error that resulted from dies being mixed up during production. We examined a 1981 penny worth $45 million that was accidentally struck on experimental silver-copper planchets during a crucial transitional period in American coinage. And finally, we revealed the ultimate prize, the 1971 experimental error penny worth $50 million, a coin that represents an alternate history and a glimpse into what might have been. These aren't just coins. They're life-changing discoveries. They're pieces of history. They're proof that paying attention to details and being observant about the world around you can literally transform your financial future. The next time you receive change at a store, the next time you empty your pockets at the end of the day, the next time you're sorting through an old collection or helping clean out a relative's estate, slow down and look carefully at those pennies. Check the dates, examine the designs, look for anything unusual or different, because you never know when you might be holding one of these extraordinary treasures in your hand. The people who found these coins weren't professional numismatists with decades of experience. They were ordinary folks like you and me who just happened to notice something unusual and had the curiosity to investigate further. That could be you. That should be you. So start checking your pennies today. Join the treasure hunt that millions of people around the world are participating in, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the person who discovers the next great Lincoln penny error and changes your life forever. Thank you so much for watching The Coin Hunter. And remember, fortune favors the observant.